Good morning, guys. It's early in the morning here in Florida. I wanted to do a video real quick on a question that keeps coming up, and I can't answer this enough. I think this comes up probably most of all. I think it's probably one of the most asked questions dealing with CNCs, namely routers, whatever that may be. Plasma cutter is pretty basic and obvious of what you're really cutting. But I always get asked, what can I cut? Well, honestly, the real question here is what you can't cut. Really, it's a question of the knowledge of the end user. Out of all of the equipment that you'll purchase to build your CNC, the most potent of all of them is you, the end user. The actual machinist that's running the equipment is what dictates what that machine can actually do. If that machinist or wannabe machinist, novice, greenhorn, whatever you want to call them, doesn't have the knowledge to perform proper machining, well, then he's going to be limited. If you have a machinist who understands limitations and capabilities of his machine, then he can obviously mill virtually anything. It's understanding what he's dealing with in terms of torque, in terms of feed rate, in terms of RPM, in terms of tooling. Also in terms of software. I can't stress that enough. This machine is controlled exclusively through software. So realistically, you have to understand what you're dealing with when you're trying to eat this elephant, because you're going to have to do it one bite at a time. It's quite large. You really want to look at this from a perspective that if you're a novice, which again, let me just touch base on this real quick, and I'll give you an instance. Just happened to me last night. I had a gentleman message me. I'm assuming it's a gentleman. I don't know, but I'm assuming that. He messaged me and asked me about a spindle, a 2.2 kilowatt spindle, if it could machine steel. Okay? And of course I answered, of course it can machine steel. And he came back to me once again with, well, I read online, and it said you can't machine steel with it because it's at 8,000 RPM and blah, 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 and he went into this whole detail. Okay? First of all, I will state this. If you come to me with a question, okay, and this is just purely logistical, if you come to me with a question, I'm assuming you're asking me because you don't know or have the knowledge of that question. If you already have the knowledge behind the question you're asking, or feel you do, don't waste the person's time. Okay? If you think you know more than me, you may. I'm an individual, but don't be a fool. And don't be a fool to where you're a fool with your money and your time. Getting that kind of question to me really dictates that this individual, and judging from the way he writes, the way he punctuates, the way he speaks, in the sense of context of what he's writing, I can pick up right away if they're knowledgeable. And when I say that, guys that understand what they're purchasing, typically the ones I deal with that are engineers, they work for NASA, or I have sold to a couple NASA scientists. They were interesting people to deal with. But the people that really get it, they don't ask a lot of questions because they understand what they're buying. They understand what's entailed with what they're buying. The people that don't understand it, this individual told me he wanted to build a 5-foot by 10-foot table. Okay, and he wanted to run, this is interesting now, pay attention, he wanted to run a 2.2 kilowatt spindle with a plasma cutter. Okay, now just judging from the questions he was asking, like one of them that stands out probably the most is, do you hook a spindle just to the 220 volt wall outlet? Is that what you do? If you ask me a question like that, I already know you don't really know what you're dealing with. So what that tells me is you're not taking the time to even understand the components you're looking at buying. Take a step back and get away from technology in that sense, where you're sitting on these forums and you're trying to regurgitate what another, Joe Blow is telling you. Really get out there and learn about this. And when I say that, don't be afraid, and this is probably one of the most overlooked things you can do, and it'll probably help you out the most, is take some time, whether you get off a day early at work or whatever, and call up a local machine shop and see if they'll let you come in and just walk through one of their production facilities. You will learn more that way than you will ever learn on the internet, sitting there and, hoping that someone's going to give you the holy grail of machining. It's not going to happen, guys. Machining is a hands-on trade. It's something that you learn and acquire the knowledge by actually getting out there and doing it or using one of these machines. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not able to do that as much as we were in the past because you really don't see a lot of apprenticeships offered anymore like you would traditionally see. Some guys are lucky enough to get in manufacturing at a base level and work around machinists and get to see what they're doing, and it draws interest. I think to people and true entrepreneurs who understand the capabilities of these machines and being available at such a low price point, you really just need to understand the software, and you have the potential to be very profitable. And when I say that, all you have to do is go online and review a lot of what's available online in the sense of componentry being sold. And what you pick up really, really quick is the fact that the items that are being sold, I would say 85% to 90% of every item now online being sold anywhere in the world, they are using a piece of manufacturing equipment in a CNC platform. Okay, the output is high. They have to be able to regenerate. I could tell you the Chinese are masters of manufacturing. Masters. These people are trained at a very young age how important manufacturing is. It's pretty much embedded in their culture. We do not have that manufacturing background. We're gaining it. I think we have the potential to gain it, but that's a whole different video source. You can check out what I'm saying. I hope you do the background checks of what I'm saying. Everybody knows Chinese is kicking our ass point blank in manufacturing. And the thing is if you really think about it, it's because of their culture and the way it's surrounded. Their educational process is different than ours. So if you want to do something with this, you basically have to think like them and think hands-on. You have to become, if you want to learn body work for cars, you're not going to be a master body guy unless you understand it's hands-on. You're not going to sit in a classroom and learn how to take out dents and, do fills, base coat, clear coat jobs, flame jobs. It's super cool work if you're willing to dictate the time to it and learn it hands-on. It's a trade. And a lot of trades in society today have kind of brushed off. Needless to say, this is really interesting in the sense that, machining especially, it's at a point now where we ourselves can become machinists. We ourselves can control our destiny with, you don't need a product anymore to buy and flip. You can actually take and come up with an idea and manufacture the product yourself. You have that potential if you're willing to dictate and commit yourself to learning this type of trade. It's there. So, like I said and stated before I get on a tangent, because I'm trying to cover a lot of stuff, so please forgive me, I would really look into contacting a local machine shop. If you're really serious about this before you drop any amount of money, contact a local machine shop. See if they'll let you come in and walk around. Most of them will. Be respectful of their time. If you're respectful and you explain your situation, you explain what your overall goal is, most of them will work with you. You shouldn't have any issue with that. And like I stated, an hour of walking around a manufacturing facility, if you're into cars, you can go in and watch them do, engine blocks. That's super interesting work, very, very precise work. If you're, interested in a lot of things, is manufacturing is pretty much generalized. So CNC equipment is everywhere, okay? And if you're into milling, I would definitely say a local machine shop dealing with metal substrate is probably going to be your most prime area of interest. If you're looking at more wood or any type of refinishing, I would say look for a machine shop maybe with cabinets. You may have to drive for it. I'm not going to lie to you. But you know what, guys? If you had to drive an hour or 2 hours, think about this logically. If you have to drive 1 or 2 hours to learn something hands-on without paying for schooling, we all know how expensive schooling is. I can tell you firsthand, schooling is very expensive. Okay? It's ridiculous. And truthfully, in this trade, you don't need formal education in that sense. Now, will it help? Of course it'll help. But if you're willing to learn hands-on, there's really nothing you can't accomplish with this if you're willing to take your time. So dictate, whatever manufacturing facility you want to go visit. Hopefully you can find one that actually dictates it more towards the field you're trying to get in. If you're trying to do woodwork, you want to find more like cabinetry or something like that. But if you're trying to do metallurgy machining, I would definitely say Find a machine shop. Those are pretty localized everywhere. Speed shops are everywhere that have, machining capabilities. Honestly, you could even go and watch them turn down brakes at a mechanic shop. It's the same principle, guys. It's hand machining. And if you really want to know the truth, hand machining, that's where it all started. So if you understand hand machining, then it's just incorporating the CAD aspect, which is, again, a more detailed aspect where the machine is naturally going to do the work, but it's still interesting. It still shows you hands-on what's doable, what's not doable. It gives you the fundamentals, and you build on that. That's how you get smarter. That's how you learn. Every mistake is one more step in the right direction if you learn from it. And the only way you're going to do it is by going out there, and trying to learn from the right people. And the people that are doing it every day, they're the guys you want to learn from. The guy's got 20 years experience, bad teeth, probably has worked his butt to the grindstone. That's the guy, odds are, that you're going to learn the most from, because he's been doing this forever. He understands what he's doing. A lot of true machinists go by feel. They don't even use the machine settings anymore. These guys are artists. I mean, the true machinists are artists. I've seen them. I've worked with them. I can honestly tell you, it's an amazing trade if you're willing to commit and learn it. And really, it's such an adaptive trade. You can really get into it where you're looking at more delving into product designs that, even though you're learning metallurgy, learning how to mill with metal, you can use that same fundamentals and mill plastic or mill, wood. You can do it. It takes a little more time to, learn the two simultaneously, but it is doable. So every bit of knowledge you learn can be applied in different formats. You just have to take the time and be, once again, dedicated to learn and be committed. Don't give up. That being said, the original point I was going to make is, what can you cut? This gentleman messaged me and asked me if you could cut steel. Honestly, a mill can cut steel quite easily. A regular full-scale mill, we know that. Any mill, regardless of any CNC that I've seen, even if it uses a Dremel tool, can actually mill steel. Now, that being said, before my words get twisted and manipulated, like typically is done on the internet, will it do it efficiently? Is it the most efficient way to do it? It depends on what you're using. If you're using a Dremel tool, which is about 100 watts of cutting power, it's definitely not the most efficient way to mill steel. You would need a very sharp end mill and a large amount of time. And if you move slow enough and your feed rate's slow enough and your RPM is relatively close, you're going to get the results you want over duration. However, if you're looking at efficiently milling steel, and again, depending on the substrate of steel, there are different versions of steel. We all know there's mild, there's stainless, you got 316 different mild steels. Really, it's a question of what you're looking at doing. If you're looking at hardened materials and things like that, be realistic of your knowledge. Milling really is a question more of, besides the equipment, it's the question of the end user, the machinist running the equipment. You could give two guys who claim to be machinists two machines, and they will both run them two different ways. I have yet to see machinists typically follow suit with one another. That being, and I'm talking true machinists, guys. I'm not talking about guys who, they went to a vocational class and now they've got 6 months of training and they think they're a machinist. That's not a machinist. Machinist has got usually years of experience, hands-on, different metals, different substrates, tapping dies. They understand all the tooling. They understand the machine they're on. Typically, a lot of true machinists don't change a lot of machines, or they have in the past. Maybe they've worked in the beginning here and then they've gone there, but usually they want to stay on one machine and dial it in. That's what they're hoping for, because remember something, the more they know about their job, the faster the work is. You guys will encompass that as well. As you learn your robot more and more, your work becomes easier. Think about it logically. You understand things more. Things move faster. Tooling makes sense. RPM makes sense. Feed rates make sense. Think about it. And then it all goes out the window. Everything you used to read, where it was like when I was building this, all I read about was this, produce that, and da-da-da-da. And then you start getting into the realm where you start to realize, you know what? It's not about, how fast I can cut. It's about, am I able to resell this and make a profit? And am I able to do this repetitively? And, how's my quality? That's manufacturing, guys. That's really manufacturing. It's quality, it's reproduction, and it's the repeatability. If you can master those three things, you're a facility. And I hate to tell you, that's what boils it down. And I can tell you right now, that's what separates yin from yang. If the machinist that's failing, and a lot of them are, a lot of the full-scale shops are failing today, and why they are failing is because the equipment is very, very expensive. Even if you're leasing it, it's very expensive, and you got to cover that bill every month. Most people who are using these machines can afford them, pay them off, or have a very, very low rate of, I guess you could say, your low rate of investment, and then you can really go with that from there and say, what am I making? How do I plan on doing this? And build upon that. Most full-scale machine shops, 10 years ago, they weren't looking at that. They're not looking at that. So really, the question of what you can mill really is dictated by your knowledge. Okay? It's not even dictated so much by the equipment, it's your knowledge. And why I say that is, let's think logically here. Okay? Some of the softest materials can be the roughest and most abrasive. Water and a water jet becomes a super, super awesome conductive cutting method. Water jets are used pretty much in all kinds of automotive manufacturing. They are extremely powerful. They can be lethal. They can be, there's videos online of guys literally cutting through virtually every substrate with water. So it proves we have light now. We have lasers. Lasers can cut virtually anything. Okay, there's really nothing that can't be cut. So we know there's different variables there of what can be used to cut objects. Now what you're looking at is with your spindle availability, and I'll cover that real quick. If you think of it in terms of power, a Dremel tool has about 100 watts of power. Okay, most of us are familiar with a Dremel tool. Most of us own a Dremel tool. That being stated, you also have spindles, and I'm going to point out, different sizes. A 2.2 kilowatt spindle, okay, and those are the ones I prefer. And why I prefer them is bang for your buck. It's probably the best overall size to own because it's large enough to cut virtually most materials you'd want to cut on a CNC, and it's also at a price point that's not going to break the bank. That's the big thing. A 2.2 kilowatt spindle equivalates out to 2,200 watts of cutting power, okay? They're usually 220 volt giant motors with a very, very true, they have a very true run out. Okay, so your end mill then has very little play, everything is virtually true, and again, that's your cutting platform. Okay, now I want you to think about something like this. We talked about the Dremel, it's got 100 watts, now you're at 2,200 kilowatts, or 2,200 watts, excuse me. If you think in terms of a Dremel, and you put a cutting bit, a router bit on a Dremel, or better yet, a grinding bit on a Dremel, okay, and you set the RPM at 10,000 RPM, you can use that to cut steel, okay? I can tell you right now, I and many other, I don't really consider myself a true machinist. I do come from a machinist background, but I don't consider myself a true 100% machinist. I will say this, I have a lot more experience with it than most because of my background. That being said, I and a couple other true machinists that I've seen, they have used Dremel tools to machine. I've seen things I still can't believe machined with a Dremel tool, and if the technique is right, you would be absolutely astounded at what 100 watts of cutting power can do. You can virtually cut anything. The big thing is how long are you willing to wait? And is it actually feasible to do it? Is it realistic? Is it something you think is efficient enough to say on a day-to-day basis for a product I'm creating, does this make sense? And honestly, again, it depends on the project. Most of all, it depends on your budget, because realistically, if the budget is sound, you're going to pick the cutting source that makes the most sense to do the job efficiently and last the longest, because guys, you want a return on your investment. So you have to think like that, okay? The big thing here I would really look at is think of in terms of what you'll be doing. If you're a guy that's looking at cutting, I don't know, aluminum on a daily basis, the 2.2 kilowatt spindle is probably going to be your best friend. Okay, 2.2 kilowatts equivalates out to about 3 horsepower. It's 2.95 if I'm correct. You can check me on that, but it's about 3 horsepower. 3 horsepower of cutting is ridiculous amount of torque to put on a machine that you can literally have in a separate room. If you really think about that, you have that kind of cutting potential on a small size table in your house. There's not a hell of a lot you can't cut with that, okay? Especially if you're using the proper end mill, proper RPM, and probably the most important thing of all is your feed rate. Because remember something, guys, the easiest explanation of feed rate, and I can't stress this enough, take your drill. Take a cordless drill, throw a standard drill bit, titanium nitride, whatever you want, throw it in there, and we're going to demonstrate feed rate. Take and jam that drill as fast as you can into a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum and see how fast you go through it without breaking a bit or breaking your arm, whichever comes first, and you're going to figure out feed rate. That's feed rate. How fast you're actually engaging the substrate you're trying to machine. Okay? If you take your time with the substrate you're trying to machine, you could virtually cut anything pending the end mill is sharp and pending the RPM is adjusted correctly. They all work in conjunction, but eventually you'll find that sweet spot and you'll get a cut. You have to think like that. These machines, that's really all you're doing is adjusting those 3 variables to find the sweet spot. Once the sweet spot's found, you want to take notes on that. You want to go through that and break it down, and then there you go. You figured out, what's the best method and the proper method to do what you're doing on the table you have with the equipment you have. Really, that's all there is to it. That's really the question at hand. When I hear things like that and guys message me and say, will it cut steel, will it cut aluminum, this, that, and the other thing, let's just think logically here. Okay, you can use a hand drill, which is 18 volts. Okay, that's a cordless drill. I've got a Black & Decker drill here. I use nothing special as far as drill bits, titanium nitride, and I can drill into steel. Okay, am I drilling into stainless? I prefer not to, but anything is possible over duration. If you're willing to sit there and, do it over time, most things will drill. Is it efficient? Hell no. But is it possible? Of course it is. Everything is possible depending upon what you're working with. You have to think like that. Machinists don't look at, hey, can I cut this? Machinists look at what variables they have, assess them with the tools they're working with, and then make a decision. And that's what they do. They keep tweaking that decision to find the sweet spot, to find the tolerance level that they're looking for, and then replicate it over and over and over. That's how you get good at something. And that's how you become a professional. Because, guys, what's the definition of a professional? A professional is simply a novice who's done trial and error enough and practiced all of the foundation of what craft they're mastering to where they know it. They know how to reproduce results at any given time. Novices cannot do that. They cannot reproduce the same result consistently. With a professional, they do it consistently. Once you get to that level and you're able to do it, I don't care if it's even with one product you have, you are a professional. That's the definition of professional. Okay? Think about it like that. So can you use a spindle or can you mill steel with your CNC? Well, enough talk. I do have some evidence here. And I'm going to prove to you. This is, again, a guy online. Don't know who this is. If you look here, it says his feed rate, is 30 inches a minute. His depth of cut is very minor. I mean, we're looking at, nothing here. His total of passes is 26 passes per cut. So he's taking his time. Okay, he's obviously doing this and finding out, and if you look at the hit count on his video, he's obviously doing it and trying to figure out, hey, will this work? Obviously, it'll work. I mean, if I play the video, and you guys can check this link out here, it's up here. It's right here. Check it out. Look at it. I mean, he's cutting steel. Okay, it's totally doable. Again, and he's not using that large a spindle, I don't believe. I can't tell from the picture, but it does not look to be that large. It does not look to even be 2.2 kilowatt. So think about that for a minute. I mean, it's doable. Is it optimal? We don't know. We don't know the variables here. What's the RPM he's using? What end mill? Matter of fact, I think in this video he does explain what end mill he's using. I'm sure it's a new end mill or damn close to it. Okay, but it's definitely doable. Okay, aluminum, definitely doable. I mill aluminum a lot. I can tell you, yes, it's doable. Plastics are like butter. Okay? I mean, if you're doing it right, plastics are like butter. Remember, the key with plastics, light, soft substrates, you do not want to melt it. The idea is to cut and not melt. We're not looking at, liquefying the polymers from plastic. We're sitting there and we want to cut it. You want to cut smoothly. Again, if you're looking at milling plastics, I cannot emphasize enough, see if you can find a machine shop that will let you watch the milling of plastic. Watch, even learn their end mills. Ask advice. Say, hey, I'm looking at doing this on this kind of substrate. What would you recommend? You will save yourself hours of time. Hours. And I can't stress it enough. Any free education that you can get that's real and genuine from the source, it's priceless. You are empowering yourself. By far greater than watching a YouTube video, or by far greater than, going on your smartphone and researching on Google on the forum of, what Joe Blow feels is the right cutting speed. Think about that for a minute. Think about what I'm saying. It makes total sense. It's logic, guys. We've forgotten to get back to the basics and, really get our hands dirty and get more skin in the game, in the sense of, putting effort into what we want. If you really want it and you want to learn the right way, then do it. Take that effort. Drive 2 hours if you have to, save the money, and put it towards, you empowering yourself with an education that you've already cut that time down. Maybe you can even find a place that's using, a router. A lot of places now are using routers because they save on overhead. So they'll purchase a router over a mill if it can do flat machining, and you could walk in there and maybe be lucky enough to watch them actually run it. And ask questions on that. You'll learn a lot real time. Hey, if I bring this in, can you cut this for me? I'll even pay you to cut it. Just show me how it's done. You'd be so shocked at how many people will do that and do it in the sense, a lot of shops, they look at that, and the guy you're talking to usually will find respect in that because he sees you're willing to learn from him, which a lot of shops today, you just don't have that anymore. They're looking at a job. They're not looking at a career. So think like that. Think as a facility. Think as a small company. Small companies, they try to learn as much as they can. They try to acquire everything with little to no investment in recourse from themselves financially. This is something you have available to you that you can go out there and do, and you will find that the learning process with that is amazing when you're doing it hands-on. You will learn so much more than just, buying a machine and hoping you're going to figure it out. Buy the machine after you've made the decision too, because, some guys may find this isn't for them. And I hate to say that. If you don't believe me on that, you're going to find, truthfully, that 9 out of 10 machines that are being sold, and if you look online, guys, you can find them. Craigslist is full of CNC routers. You can find them pretty much everywhere. You can find them from big companies. Just because you have the machine doesn't mean you have the knowledge, the determination, or the products to utilize it. If you're a person that you really don't want to dictate a lot of time and you want to just get in there and start doing things, be realistic. Okay, nothing worthwhile in life is easy, and I can honestly tell you, machining is an art. It really is. Even if you're using this type of equipment, it's a lot of knowledge. It's a lot of understanding the machines, understanding the end mills, understanding speeds, lots of math. You have to really be thinking more like an engineer. And when I say that, I can't stress that enough. Machinists are probably the more practical engineers. That's the way I look at them. If you ask a true machinist, hey, I want to build this, I can tell you right now, when I was in my factories, I would go to my machinist before I go to the engineers, because 9 out of 10 times it's going to go to them first, and then the engineer says, okay, what can we do with that? Engineers are not machinists typically. So remember that. You have to remember who you're dealing with. These guys are the foundations. These guys are the ones that go in and truly get what they're dealing with. You want to be the same person. You're trying to acquire that same knowledge. So take that into consideration, and take into consideration, as I stated before, of what you can do. With these machines, the biggest limiting factor, aside from everything else, I'd say there's two. It's budget, because again, your budget's going to dictate what kind of machine you're building. And then after that, far and foremost, it's your knowledge. If you have the budget to build the machine or buy the machine that fits your application, fits what you're looking at doing, the only thing limiting you then is your knowledge. So take the time, invest in yourself, invest in, you know, your future if this is something you look at doing. And I can honestly tell you, I was probably like a lot of you, you know, I wanted to do something. I knew what I was doing in manufacturing. I knew I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. The job market is completely unstable, especially as you make more money. The thing you'll realize is the higher up in the totem pole you are, you're the first one to get cut. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's society, guys. It's what it's become. If you really think about it, this is one of the coolest ventures because a guy can do this, get this machine set up, and start learning by himself in a room, in a small facility, depending upon what his applications are, do this and literally learn and generate a separate income as he's learning, as he's actually learning and tweaking and acquiring knowledge. That is amazing. If you think about that, truly amazing, and opens up doors that you would be astounded at what you're capable of. I can't stress that enough because remember, in a day's end, okay, and I'm telling you this from full-scale manufacturing, when the product is given to a consumer who's a customer, okay, from a factory, they could care less where that product came from in the sense of, you know, is this exactly what I ordered? If the quality matches that of a facility that's full scale, they're going to buy it because guess what? That's what separates them. Think about it. It's what separates them. So if you're generating a product of equivalent quality and you're doing it with lower overhead because, again, you don't have to worry about a facility, a brick and mortar, all this other crap, you've eliminated 99.9% of the middlemen, you are profitable. That's the secret. That's the business model. Think about it. It makes sense. It's what I'm doing. I'm telling you, it's factual. And again, it's really a question of what you're producing. If you're a guy that wants to learn how to mill steel, I suggest a heavy, you know, a much heavier duty system. Aluminum would absolutely be a must in the substrates used to make the CNC. I still recommend aluminum is just about an all-around go-around because it leaves you a lot of options, especially that option. Again, you know, it's really going to be dictated by budget, but think about what I'm saying. I've covered a lot. I don't want to ramble on. I've got a lot more to say. I'll definitely do some more videos. I got some people I want to introduce to. My girlfriend is an accountant for McDonald's Corporation. So I can tell you right now, I've got probably some of the best business advice you'll see. And when I say that, I mean honestly, business advice that's more professional, more on, you know, somebody dealing with multi-million-dollar accounts on a daily basis, how they think, how they perform, how they go, because business is all the same, guys. I don't care what you're selling. If it's a product, it's all the same. And this really dictates where society is going, where the future is going with jobs. So if you think about it, your interest in this, whether it be a hobby right now, which again, I can't tell you how many guys tell me it's a hobby. It's only a hobby until it starts producing money. And then all of a sudden, when somebody sees what you've produced and says, hey, where'd you get that? All of a sudden, you've got a business. It's sitting right there in front of you. And you think about it like that, it totally makes sense. If you do have any questions, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them, but please be respectful. Don't ask me questions unless you really want the answer. I'll give you the most honest answer I can. If I don't know, I'm going to tell you. Just don't waste my time. You know, a lot of it is out there for you, and really just dictate that time to it. This is not something. If you really want to learn it and learn it right, do what I said. Take a moment, invest in you, and you'll see that you'll gain so much more out of it. I mean that seriously. And you know what? You'll save a lot of money in the long run, and that's, everybody loves that. You'll save a lot of money because you'll know then, is this really for me or am I just wasting my time? And if it is really for you, you're going to make right choices from that point on because you've learned already some things of what not to do. So take it from there. Again, I'm Vince, and if you have any questions, eDealers Direct, ebay.com, you check it out. That's my store, eDealers Direct, and I'll take care of you. Thank you.